Ganapataye Namaha. Today I want to discuss Adi Shankara's Prabodhasudhākaram. This is one of the stotra. Let us see in detail after the prayer. Jnanānandamayam devam nirmalaspatikākritim ādhāram sarva vidyānām hayagrivam upāsmahe. The ocean of the nectar of enlightenment, that is called Prabodhasudhākaram. Let us follow the introduction. Prabodhasudhākara is one of the lesser known works of Adi Shankara. It consists of 257 slokas divided into 19 chapters. One distinguishing feature of this work is that it recognizes the paths of knowledge and devotion as equally valid and expressly declares the ones of Brahman with and without attributes. In this Prabodhasudhākaram, I took only 9 chapters instead of 18. Now, what is it that human beings desire most? The question. It would be seemed that there is no single answer to this question. Desires seem to be as numerous as there are individuals. Some crave for wealth, some for fame, some for power, and so on. But it is possible to reduce all these desires to one single desire, of which all these are only different manifestations. The answer of Vedanta is in the affirmative. The one desire that is common to all human beings is, may I always be happy, may I never have experience of sorrow. Thus, everything in this world is desired for its own sake of anything. Yes, Vedanta says that this universal desire happiness is our real nature. We suffer misery only because we have not realized our real nature and wrongly think of ourselves as the body, senses, or mind. When a person says he is stout or lean, or tall or short, etc., he looks upon himself as his body. When he says, I see, I hear, I smell, etc., he identifies himself with his mind. All these identifications are wrong and result ignorance of our real nature. The highest goal of life, according to Advaita Vedanta, is the attainment of the realization of our real nature. This is not a state to be attained in some other world after the end of the present life. As in other schools of Vedanta, on the other hand, it is to be attained here in this world and during this life itself. This is a state known as Jivan Mukti, means liberation in life. This is attained when one realizes that he is not the body or the senses or the mind, but the self or Atma, which is identical with Brahman. The Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita expound the means of attaining this state. One essential requisite for this is purity of mind, which means a mind free from cravings for worldly pleasures. This should not be misunderstood as meaning that one has to renounce the world and take sannyasa. What has to be cultivated is an attitude of detachment. One who has such an attitude will be able to engage himself in his normal worldly activities without becoming unduly distressed by adversities or unduly elated by favorable happenings. Only a person who has attained such a state of equanimity of mind will be able to concentrate his mind on the teachings of the Upanishads and gave up his wrong identification with the body, senses, and mind. When this wrong identification is given up, he remains as what he is in reality, namely the Atma or Self, which identical with Brahman. Brahman is bliss, and so when one realizes his identity with the means by which such a detachment can be cultivated. Thereafter, the book deals with the means by which such a detachment can be cultivated. That can be such matters as the nature of the self and leads a step to ultimate goal. Now let us come to chapter 1. What it says, censure of the physical body. The work commences with a salutation to Krishna, described as a supreme lord of Yadava race, who is none other than unborn self-effulgent supreme being, who is a pure existence, consciousness, and eternal bliss. Thus, the identity of the personal God with Nirguna Brahman is established at the very outset. The next verse points out that Brahman, whom even the Vedas are unable to describe, is certainly not accessible to the words of human beings. Through this is so. He can be attained through the scriptures and by contemplation on and singing the praise of Lord Hari. However, spiritual practices, knowledge, and devotion are of no avail without the cultivation of intense dispassion. Dispassion, knowledge of the self, and devotion. These three together constitute the means to liberation. Dispassion is the total absence of desire for all objects of enjoyment, the notions of I and mine are the obstacles to the rise of dispassion. The notions of I relates to the body, and the notion of mine relates to the objects such as wife, son, and possessions. If one ponders deeply over the nature of the body and its relationship with the objects, these two notions can be gradually eliminated. The jiva takes a body in accordance with his past karma and is born as a result of the union of the father and mother. The jiva is baked by the flames of the digestive fire in the womb of the mother, surrounded by mucus, urine, and fecal matter. After birth, he undergoes the sufferings of various kinds in childhood due to illness and other causes. The human body is the highest in the scale of evolution. Even among human beings, birth in noble family of learned persons, which is conducive to the study and practice of the teachings of the Vedas in the highest and most to be desired. There cannot be a greater loss for this. The next birth may be as an animal or bird, etc., in which there is absolutely no possibility of spiritual progress. These creatures cannot even give expression to the suffering undergone by them. The physical body is a collection of blood, bones, marrow, fat, flesh, and the like. It is covered outside by the skin, but for this covering, it would be snatched and eaten by crows. The very sight of the phlegm emitted by the nostrils and the mouth and the facial matter from the anus is revolting. If a man sees a bone lying on the road, he would walk away from it in disgust. But he does not realize that his own body is full of similar bones. The body is full of foul smelling matter from the hair on the tip of the nails. People anoint this body with sandal paste and various cosmetics in order to conceal its defects. Fools praise the body, attributing merits to it. If a wound on the body is not clean for the 3 days, worms arise there and a bad smell emanates. The body, which till then slept on a beautiful couch, is bound with ropes and pieces of wood and thrown into the fire when life depends on it. People worship with joy a king seated on his throne, but when he dies, they do not like even to look at his body, forgetting the Supreme Lord because of which or because of whom the impure body is sentient. And active man looks upon his body as himself. Where is the self which is of the nature of a pure existence and consciousness? And where is the body made of flesh, blood, and bones? Could any wise man think highly on the impure body? Now, chapter 2, Censure of the Objects of Sense. The deluded man goes after sense pleasures which only weaken his body. Just as a house made of mud, which has collapsed because of heavy rain, cannot be strengthened with mud, the man cannot regain his strength by indulging more in sense pleasures. A man is initiated or infatuated with his wife, even if she is not beautiful, and this causes him mental agitation. But if she happens to be beautiful, his unhappiness is even greater because others may look upon her with longing. If the wife is very foolish or disobedient to her husband, she becomes worse than an enemy. The Veda says that there is no world for a man without a son. Aputrasya gatir nasti. What is a world? referred to by this statement, it is certainly not liberation. It cannot also this world or heaven, because there are other means to attain them. The performance of sacrifice such as putra kameshti are useless because they do not lead to real and permanent happiness. Before a son is born, a man is anxious to get one. When a son is born, the father is full of anxiety about his life. He is also worried whether the son will be intelligent and of a good character or otherwise. If the son hurts the father or mother or other relatives, he causes further misery to the parents. Even if the son has all virtues, there will be great unhappiness if he is diseased or dies prematurely. If it is said that a son enables his father to attain a higher world after death, that also does not stand to reason, because each person's future depends on his own actions and merits, and not on somebody else. Every person goes through innumerable births in which he has different fathers, mothers, sons, and relatives. Such associations are therefore purely transient, like wayfarers meeting at some place and then dispersing. The sons and the other dependents are happy only if they are fed and looked after well. Otherwise, they become angry. Everyone puts in great effort to acquire as much wealth as possible. But if excessive wealth is acquired, there is a danger from thieves. Taxes levied by the government may take away a substantial portion of the wealth. Thus, the objects acquired with great effort for the sake of getting happiness leads ultimately only to unhappiness and mental agitation. Chapter 3. Censure of the mind. The mind, when possessed by the demoness of desire, becomes a devil. It wanders all over, is sometimes happy, sometimes sad, sometimes angry, and so on. It is sometimes virtuous and sometimes wicked. It is pulled in different directions by pride, greed, desire, anger, jealousy, and other emotions. One can attain dispassion by giving up desires. The mind will then become calm. Chapter 4. Discarding objects of sense. The boat in the form of human body is dragged here and there by the force of past karma, the ocean of worldly existence, which is full of water in the form of sense objects. This boat has 9 openings. Water in the form of sense objects enters through these openings and tends to sink the boat. If these openings are kept closed, the jiva, who is a boatman, can reach the other shore with ease. Without controlling the senses, none can cross the ocean of worldly existence. Some instances where free rein to the senses contributes to spiritual downfall are now given. A man looks with longing at the young wife of another man. This results only in his accumulating sin. A man listens to scandalous tales about another man who is, however, not in the least affected by it. The only result is that the man listening to such tales incurs a sin. When a person makes false allegations about others, those persons are not affected in the least, but the person who makes such allegations becomes a great sinner. The pleasure enjoyed for a few moments because of the contact of the senses with an object turns into lifelong misery when that object is lost. Therefore, the wise man should give up the hankering after such fleeting pleasures and seek what is eternal. Now, chapter 5. Restraint of the mind. If the mind is not allowed to go towards external objects, but is fixed on the self, it will become identified with the self. When the mind is thinking of sense objects, it becomes tainted and tamo guna predominates. When the mind withdraws itself from the sense objects and attains dispassion towards them, sattva guna will begin to manifest. Prakriti, which is the material cause of the whole world, is said to be composed of three gunas or modes, namely sattva, rajas, and tamas. The mind is also constituted of the same three gunas. The proportion of these gunas varies from time to time, depending on the activities of the mind, and one guna or the other predominates. A person is actuated by greed and is inclined to engage in action for the fulfillment of his desires, heedless of the consequences. When tamoguna predominates, the person becomes lazy and goes into torpor. The mind of the ordinary person constantly seeks pleasure through the sense organs. If the desired object is not attained, the person thinks that he has lost something very valuable and is very unhappy. Everyone has to experience the consequences of his actions in this life or in another life. This is inexorable law. The only way to prevent the mind from running out in search of sense pleasure is by the cultivation of disposition. The happiness experienced in deep sleep is not born of any sense object, because at that time there is no contact of the mind with external objects through the sense organs. Chapter 6. Detachment. A person who has come as a guest for a short period to a house will not be unduly elated or depressed by any good or bad happenings in that house. Similarly, a person should stay in his house like a guest, unaffected by whatever happens in the house. One who is free from the notions of I and mine and who has turned his mind away from sense objects is never affected by anything, even if he is staying in his house. For a man who sleeps in a forest at the cool foot of a tree, where the ground is covered by sand and thick grass, the tree is rich in leaves and fruits, the cool, fragrant breeze, the birds which sing sweetly, and the rivers become friends. The man who has attained total disposition or dispassion, whose mind is tranquil, who is free from desire, and who enjoys whatever comes to him unsolicited, has attained fulfillment here in this life itself. If an object is lost due to the carelessness, great sorrow is experienced. But if the same object is presented to a deserving and respected person, there is a great joy for the giver. Similarly, if the reason that becomes a cause of sorrow for a long time. But if they are willingly renounced, there is happiness and ultimately liberation. Chapter 7, The Self. Although the knowledge about the self is contained in the Upanishads, the spiritual aspirant should get it only from a guru. The knowledge of the self obtained from mere study of the Upanishads is indirect, like the knowledge from the mere statement that jaggery is sweet, which cannot give one any idea of what jaggery looks like or what is the nature of its sweetness. The knowledge received from Guru is like the knowledge obtained by looking at the jaggery from a distance, which gives an idea of what jaggery look like, but not about how it is. The knowledge attained by the aspirant by intuitive perception or realization of the self is like the delight one gets on actually testing jaggery or tasting jaggery. Thus, while the scriptures and the guru can only point out the way, actual realization of the self depends on one's own effort. What is it that enables us to experience taste, smell, form, sound, and touch, and everything else? It cannot be the physical body or the sense organs, because these exist even the dead body. But the dead body does not experience any pain when burnt. It cannot be the vital airs, because even though the prana is active during sleep, a person remains ignorant of thieves entering the house and stealing things. If it is said that it is a mind that enables us to have all these experiences. Now, chapter 8, Maya. Shloka 95 of Prabodhasudhākaram says that the Supreme Self, who is nothing but pure consciousness, saw himself as I. Thus he got the appellation I. That was the origin of difference and multiplicity. The above verse is based on Brihadaranyaka, which says, in the beginning there was nothing other than himself. He said, I am he. Soham. Therefore, he came to be called I. Therefore, even today, when person is addressed, he first says, it is I, and then only gives his name. Shloka 96 says that the self existed as two parts, as a husband and the supreme self created all creatures by its Maya, just as we create various objects in dream. So the universe is only like a dream. Maya, which is the power of the Supreme Self, is neither different from nor identical with the Self. It is beginningless and is dependent on the Self, which is only reality. श्रेयकांताय कल्याण निधे निधेनाम श्री वेंकट निवासाय श्रीनिवासाय मंगलम मंगलाशासन प्रेमदाचार्य पुरोगमैः सर्वैश्च पूर्वैराचार्य सत्कृतायास्तु मंगलम्.